Hey everybody, good morning and welcome to the November Master Gardener and Western Water Water Efficient Landscaping Workshops. That is a mouthful. Today we're joined by me, your host, Jeffrey Diaz. I am the Water Use Efficiency Coordinator at Western Water. We're joined with Master Gardener Melody Knox and our presenter, Lynn Kaufman, also Master Gardener. We have a really exciting workshop today, probably one of my favorites because it ties in directly with my work at Western. Today we're going to be learning about lawn removal, specifically um, focused on the turf replacement program requirements and the design considerations. If any of you have ever thought about doing a lawn transformation, a landscape transformation, uh, making your landscape at your house, at your residence, more water efficient, more of a native plants, something that's a little more eco-friendly. This is the workshop for you, and I'm really excited to let you know that as a Western Water customer, you are eligible for $6 a square foot if you do one of these landscape transformations, which means if you transform your landscape, remove your thirsty grass and replace it with water efficient, climate friendly, climate appropriate California native plants, you can you can get a rebate back up to $6 a square foot. So that's really exciting. If you guys are interested in that, you're more than welcome to give me a call. I'll drop my contact information in the chat. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Melody, so she can plug in her information with the Master Gardener programs.
Well, good morning, everyone. And I want to say thank you for joining us today, coming out here to listen to an excellent presentation, which actually, unfortunately, in December, we're going to go dark. We're not going to have a Wells workshop, but we're going to pick back up in January and February. Again, my name is Melody, and I'm a UC Master Gardener. And I do see some other UC Master Gardeners in here. So thank you again for joining us and supporting us. Really quick, what we are, we're research-based, or we should give research-based information to the community. And there's many different things that we do as Master Gardeners. But just really quickly, we're usually at these different events like in Corona or Palm Springs, Temecula, downtown Riverside, Murrieta. And these are the farmers markets. And so you may see an info table there, and you're more than welcome to walk up to us and ask us questions about what's going on in your garden. And also, as we progress through this workshop today, I will be putting information into the chat. So that way you guys can kind of get better information on how to find us. Also with, we have a helpline, and I will be putting that into the chat as well. Our person that we're having presenting today is Lynn Kaufman. I always want to call her Lynn Hoffman. I don't know why that is, Lynn. But she's one of our fellow Master Gardeners, and she has a whole lot of information to give to us. So I'm going to shut up because all my friends in here that know me, you guys know I can talk. So I'm going to talk really fast, so you can listen really fast. But I'll have her introduce herself to you guys. And also, if you can put all the questions into the chat, don't be impatient because it might be some things that she's going to cover anyway. So I will be monitoring the chat. Now, if it's something that you have to hear right away, then put it in there again and say, Melody, can you go ahead and ask her this? But that's how we're going to do it today. Again, thank you all for coming. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Lynn.
Thank you, Melody and Jeffrey. I appreciate that. Good morning, everyone. I'm excited about giving this information to all of you. In my dealings with the public, with the gardening, I get a lot of questions around this, and my goal is to help you understand it so you're not intimidated and that you can proceed from there. So today we are going to talk about lawn removal, but we're going to put it within the context of the turf replacement program and their requirements from a design point of view, and how you can approach it, in whether you have to do that in phases or whether you're able to do that all at one shot. So why are we focusing on lawn removal? Well, I know all of you probably noticed that there's been some changing in the weather, and not necessarily all in the positive direction. While it is true, we are living in what they consider a Mediterranean climate, and some of you may be edging closer to a desert climate, depending on where you are in the Riverside County. We're not always landscaping with that in mind. Historically, the aesthetic approach to landscaping was to use sod grass and a few foundation plantings at the base of the house. And that's what people have become accustomed to, and that's what they've been using, but it's not working with nature here. It's working against nature. And that may have worked for a while, but because of these extreme swings of our weather, which it happens on a day by day or a season by season basis, in addition to a climate which happens over long periods, multiple years over time, we've noticed that it has become hotter and drier over time. We have almost a huge swing between wet years and dry years with longer periods in between. And as a result of that, it has made some insecurity in our water supply. So in order to make sure that we can have water to survive and thrive, we have to think about different things we can do to improve that situation. And one of them has to do with our landscaping. So that's where we're going with this. Why you would listen to me is because I have been a master gardener since 2018. I actually was born and raised on a farm, so I've been dealing with plants my entire life. But I was on a farm in the Midwest, and when I moved here as a young adult to start my adult life, I had to make a real pivot on how to make things work in a vastly different climate than what is in Illinois. And so that's where I really began my journey about how to work with plants here in Southern California. Along the way, I also became what they call Quell certified, which means I'm a qualified water efficient landscaper. That is a certification through the EPA to help focus specifically on water application to different types of plantings and how to build the systems in order to deliver that water. So I have had some pretty consistent and has to keep that certification current. So I keep learning new things along the way. And as a result of having that certification, I also did a stint working with Inland Empire Water Savers, which had a grant from the state of California to assist homeowners to problem solve why their yards were not working and how they could become more efficient. So I've had a lot of hands-on experience and heard a lot of problems individual residential owners have about their landscape. And I'm drawing on all of those things to help pass that information to you. So I look forward to hearing questions you have, and I hope I answer more questions than I make come up. So, has turf become a four-letter word? Interesting question. The short answer is no. That's the good news. However, turf has become something that we need to really take a good look at because grass uses more water than any other plant on earth. And when you live in a climate that has low water naturally falling and flowing in their streams, having grass, which uses a lot of water, which was kind of the aesthetic default that happened in England, and was transported over here as a way to have a beautiful lawn, is no longer able to be sustained. And since we have to make some adaptations to be able to have a consistent water supply, we have to let go of the easier things first and see how that goes. So using less turf grass is one way to do that. People don't think that there's other reasons why grass is not necessarily the best option for your landscape. Grass is considered as a desert, and you think, how on earth could it be a desert when it's beautiful and lush and green? Well, by desert, we mean that it is a monoculture, meaning there's only one plant there. It's all a bunch of little tiny plants close together, grass, but it doesn't encourage any wildlife or any pollinators, anything other than just grass. And that does not help the ecosystem, which also doesn't help our food system. And so that's why it's considered a desert, in spite of the fact that it uses a lot of water. It's also very high maintenance. And I know people think, what's there to think about? You just mow it and go on. Well, you are mowing it frequently, any times from 1 to 2 times a week. That takes energy, both for the person who's doing the work and from the machinery that's doing the assisting of that work. So it does require a lot of consistent, constant maintenance. And also to look good, you must use a lot of supplemental approaches to add chemicals or food, if you will, to your grass. And that can raise some concerns ultimately about the quality of the water in the water table, because that either runs off into the ocean, or it might even be absorbed into the ground and affect the water table that way. So the more and more chemicals we add, even if they're organic chemicals, also has an effect to the water quality, in which we have to rely on. And most people don't think about this. As you have just a grass yard, it becomes compacted. We start compacted as it is. Builders, compact the soil in order to put the house up. And then when you have grass that doesn't have anything living to keep it moving and changing, it kind of settles harder and harder and harder. And the result of that is that water doesn't even absorb into the ground when it rains. It just runs off. If any of you had a pot or a container that has flowers in it, and you don't water it frequently enough, and you've noticed that it becomes very hard, the soil, that's in effect what it's doing. And you'll also notice if you put water on it, it just sometimes misses the soil altogether and runs down the sides. Again, that's what's happening in your lawn. And we're trying to avoid that. We need water to absorb into the ground so plants can access it. The challenging part is that we've become accustomed to looking at a lawn and we don't really know what else to do. And that's what I'm going to help give you some ideas about how to change the way you think about your yard. I will say, because I went out and looked at homes that did this as part of that turf replacement program years ago, just ripping your grass out without a plan is not the answer, because this is what you end up with. On the left, you have someone who just stops. These people, unfortunately, also took all of their irrigation out, which was also a mistake I do not recommend, because then they had nothing. And now this lot became hotter and drier. Dust was blowing. It affected the neighborhood's values, because this is not considered attractive by most people. So it's not a good thing. On the right, the picture was they took their grass out and they thought, oh, I'll just blanket it with gravel. Again, not a good aesthetic for sure, but also increases the heat, ambient heat around the house, does keep the blowing of dust down because of the rock, but it's not really adding any value in any other way other than they don't have to pay a gardener to mow it. So doing either one of these things, though, does disqualify you from receiving rebates, even if you take your turf out. So we want you to know what the rules are so that you can plan properly and be prepared to do the right thing to get to where you really want it to go. And it does depend on your goals. A lot of these fast rip out lawns are driven strictly by, we think we're going to save money. Not really the right question. The question is, how do we conserve the resources so we have it when we need it? So I want to start walking you through why this approach was put into place so you understand where you're going to go a little bit better. So the goal of the turf replacement program is to increase sustainability, which means we are utilizing the water we do receive through rain or snow and be able to most effectively use the water we have to import and supply to our yards. And the construction of homes has not worked in favor of this concept. It used to be a standard builder home, scraped everything off the land, compacted it really hard, and put in drainage that would make all the water run off the lot into the street. That kills the soil, doesn't absorb any water for the plants or the aquifer to take into place, and we just lose everything that we are trying to conserve and use. So the new way is to approach it from like it would be in nature, and that's what they could call the watershed landscape. This is where you're trying to keep all the water you receive onto your property so it doesn't run off and get wasted. And that way, the deeper it goes into the ground, the more the deep roots of plants can access it, so you don't have to add as much supplemental water in order to keep your plants looking good. And we approach that by using 3 different techniques, if you will, in order to make that work. Because like any system, it's not a one single answer. There's multiple ways in which to approach this. So the first thing is, let's get rid of the plants that use the most water. That's your turf. Now let's make sure you have the most efficient water application systems possible. And if you haven't upgraded your irrigation in the last 5 years, you are already not taking advantage of amazing leaps in how the technology can become more efficient. And we'll talk more about that when I do the presentation on irrigation. And then the watershed approach, it helps you retain the water that you are receiving naturally from the rain, here, snow if you're in the mountains, and be sure that it's accessible as much as possible to your plants. And we'll talk about that in another way about what the specifics around that, but I'm just trying to give you the big picture at this point. So the goal of the turf replacement program is to give you dollar incentives to help pay for the cost of you changing from your turf lawn, as on the left, to an attractive climate appropriate yard, which is also attractive. It's just different. And it's utilizing plants that are more resilient to drought and can survive when there are times when you might have some water restrictions. So that's what we're trying to do. And Jeffrey said that Western Municipal Water District customers are now getting $6 a square foot. That is the highest amount I have ever heard. It is going to make a tremendous dent, if not nearly pay for, a simple lawn transformation. If you're in a different water district, those of you listening, you need to go to your water district to find out what they're offering you. They all vary by water district, but all of them are offering it, and in Southern California. So please know what you have available. So that's part of your planning process. So let's talk about where you need to start. Let's say you've already become convinced you want to remove your turf in order to save water, help the environment become more sustainable. Let's say you bought into all of that, but now what? There are some rules around this game, and it's not so much that it's a game or that they're rules. It's helping you make design decisions and timing decisions and money decisions so you can get where you want to go as quickly as you can. And that might be slower for some people than others, and that's all okay. It's just we're trying to make everyone move in that direction. So before you do anything, do not take your yard out. You must have live turf in order to qualify for the program. I've had a lot of people disqualify themselves because they took their grass out too soon. In addition to this, before you want to start your project, you need to know what you're going to put in. Now, this doesn't have to be done by a professional. This can be done by a homeowner, and it doesn't have to be down to the last individual plant, but it does have to have some general ideas about what the areas are, how you're using the areas, and what type of plants you want to put in, because that will affect the irrigation you put in. And you want to be able to go with that, because like every project, it goes time and it doesn't always go according to plan. But if you know what you're trying to achieve, yeah, that gets you way down the pike. Then we have to be realistic about money. None of this is free. You have to pay for this to get it done, and then you get a rebate, which is after the fact. So you have to be realistic in what your budget is. I've had a number of people come up to me in some of my presentations that were live and say, and I'd say, what's your budget? And they'd say $500. I said, what can you buy for $500? Plants are about $15 a gallon divided by 500. You've put in, 10 plants maybe. So be realistic about what you're doing. Now, it's not that this is doing it on the cheap, it's doing it frugally, but you have to be realistic. And then who is going to do the work? Do you have a lot of demolition, very, very little demolition? Are you able to do the demolition? Must you hire it? And the same is true for the installation, because that is all part of the project. And that money that you can get as a rebate can be applied to all of those elements, which is good. But be aware that that's part of the budget consideration. And then what is your timeline? To meet the qualifications for the turf replacement program, everything from start to finish meets in 6 months. So if you're not doing it yourself, or you are doing it yourself, some of the techniques I'll be talking about, you have to know, do you have enough time in order to get that done to receive your rebate? So all of that is what they call classic project management. So I'm just letting you know, you can't always just shoot from the hip here. You do have to have a plan. Once you have those questions answered or things in place, then is when you go to the water district and apply to secure the rebate monies. Once you get an acceptance of your project, the rules aren't going to change on you. The money is kept for you, and it will be received assuming you execute it the way that it needs to be done. So That's the overview of the whole project. Just follow the 1, 2, 3 steps and you'll be fine. So what are those design requirements from the turf replacement program? And I want to talk about it. Remember, this is a turf replacement program, not a turf removal program, because it's more than just talking about the grass. So in the turf replacement program, we are removing some turf, if not all of the turf. And those requirements mean that it has to be live, that you have a minimum of 200 square feet to be removed, and way more than that. And there's some sliding adjustments on the monies available depending on how much you remove. So that would be part of you reading what those requirements are. But at minimum, you have to have 200 square feet that you're going to take out. You can't put in any turf-like plants. That's a little bit gray, I will say. But anything that looks like grass or has to be mowed a lot like grass is not going to be allowed. And you can absolutely, positively have no fake grass, no artificial synthetic grass. That creates more problem environmentally than even just dirt does. So that is no longer allowed. On the sustainability requirements, what you have to be sure that you do is that you do not add any new hardscape unless it's permeable. You will not be required to take out your driveway if it's already there. But if you add a sidewalk from the driveway to the house, that must be permeable and not just concrete, if that's the area in which you want to use for your rebate program. You must add a storm retention or a storm filtration system. There are two different ways of keeping water on your property. One is passive and one is not. The passive one is where you do filtration. You're going to build some kind of a berming system that will allow water to slowly sink into the ground. That can be built into the landscape by contouring. The other way is that you install a cistern or water barrels at your gutters, at the base of your gutters, and that collects the water. And then you can take that collected water and put that onto your landscape. So you can do whichever one you, or both, that you want to do. Remember that there's a minimum of 3 plants that have to go into the area. Now that will depend on the size of the area, of course. You don't want 3 plants put in an acre that's had grass removed, but that's the minimum required. Then you must upgrade, replace, or modify your irrigation systems to the newer technologies, which will make what water you put onto your landscape more efficient. And then you must add 3 inches of mulch to the finished plantings in order to keep the water you've put onto it in the ground and not have it evaporate up into the air. So they're very pretty straightforward, but I'm hoping I'm giving you some of the logic behind it. So you see, oh, that's not just a rule for a rule's sake. There's a reason that it will all increase water retention or water efficiency onto your landscape. And then, as I said, it's a minimum of 3 plants. So just because you can do a minimum of 3 plants doesn't mean that you should just do 3 plants. This particular homeowner did more than 3 plants, but I would argue that's not particularly aesthetically beautiful. Doesn't have any capture of water that I can see unless in the back they've added some kind of system. And if you don't know how to design, because most people do get stuck on this point, there are a lot of design concept templates all over the internet. I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go along to help you visualize it, because it's very hard to change the way you've seen landscape to something entirely new. It is difficult. So the question is, to grass or not to grass? Well, it's not necessarily an all or nothing proposition either. You can reduce your turf and still be moving toward the goal. So this is an example where they had the standard turf yard and they reduced it roughly in half, let's say, and still have a beautiful yard. So the question is really, what do you need the grass for? And they have divided that into, it's either functional, because there are reasons to have grass. You have children that need to play on it. You have dogs that need to have an area to relax on. There could be, in public spaces, there's playing fields, so there's reasons to have grass. So if you have a good reason for the grass, keep a level of grass or something that feels and looks like grass, which we can talk about later, that may or may not fit the turf replacement program, but still fits within the way that you want to live as sustainably as possible. And then there's what they call non-functional live grass. And this is mostly grass that's designed to just look at. No one even actually walks across it or uses it in any way. And that's the grass that we're really targeting to try to remove and take out of the equation. So this is just a way to look at it. If you're an empty nester here on the left, you might decide, I don't need any grass in my backyard, but I want to keep a little bit of grass, which they've still reduced, in the front so that it blends aesthetically with the neighborhood. They've still gotten rid of probably 75% of their turf in this lot, making a large improvement in their water usage. On the other hand, if you're a family, you might decide you need more grass in the backyard so your kids and dogs can play, and you don't need any in the front yard. So they kind of flipped that concept. So they are keeping grass that is functional for them at their present life stage, and they've still reduced the turf. They take it completely out of the front, and they have enlarged the beds along other areas of their backyard and still kept a nice play area. So just don't think of it as all or nothing. Think about where it will work for the way you live. All plants are going to have less water requirements than turf. So anything that you see labeled in a nursery that is drought tolerant or drought adapted, California friendly, water wise, those are all marketing terms, meaning these plants don't use as much water as food plants or grass. What this means is these are all plants that have adapted to an area and evolved this way in an area that has less rainfall. Broadly speaking, that's a Mediterranean climate. California is one of the 5 areas in the world that is a Mediterranean climate, even though we're the driest of the 5 regions. So we have a huge plant palette available to us because we can draw from 5 different areas of the world and grow almost anything. So if you aren't sure a plant that you have or one that you want to acquire fits this low water use definition, I've included these 3 databases as a way for you to double check that. The WUCLs, the top one, is the gold standard for all landscaping, commercial and residential in the state of California. It'll cover virtually any plant you've ever heard of. The WaterWise Garden Planner is designed specifically for Inland Empire, which is great because it will tell you what will thrive here, more toward the western end of the county than the desert area, although many of the plants they put in this one will also work in the desert. And then if you're interested in going more on the native side, Calscape is the definitive resource for what native plants do well in what regions of our area. We have one of the most complicated and micro systems in our state than anywhere in the world. And literally a climate can change across the street. So this will help you decide if this is what it will thrive. So an extreme example would be if you plant a redwood tree in the city of Riverside, it'll grow with enough water thrown on it, but it is growing naturally in a temperate rainforest, not in this inland empire with its dry inland area. So while it might make it with a lot of water, it's not a good choice. We have other things that grow natively here, and that's where you want to look at your plant selection from. I do want to talk something about turf alternatives, because if you do need something as a playing field that's not turf, that may or may not, you'll have to ask specifically to your water district about it, but you need it for functional reasons. You can use other things. So the example I have here in this, where this kind of grayish blue ground cover is actually something called Diamondia. It grows about 3 inches tall. It looks like individual daisy plants all closely put together. It requires very little water, and it is walkable. I wouldn't say it's playable. You know, dogs and kids throwing balls at dogs playing catch, this probably wouldn't be strong enough. But if it's something you have to walk across somewhat frequently, it might be a good option for you. So those steppables are something that's very low growing and can be walked on at least occasionally, not hard play. Spreading perennials work, and low and dwarf shrubs work. So I have an example in the picture with the house, which was one of the houses I re-landscaped. The low plant in front of that boulder is actually lantana. That's what they call a low shrub. And if you have that, makes a nice ground cover. It's low, but it only needs a little water put on it, and it's not turf. Ornamental grasses can be used to good design option. That's the lower one where they've put in some large grasses to give it some interest. And pavers and mulch, if they're used as a design element and not just because the default, I don't know what to do, and you spread everything out, can be very effective. And that's a good example of it in that lower right corner. Again, don't use synthetic grass. It won't apply. If you want to know more about natives, which is, to be frank, is a little harder to find, especially if you're going to big box nurseries. This is a good way to help you know how to design with natives with these websites that I put up. It actually has taken me a while to find them and put them together to be good, but it's good if you're using natives, but if you use it from a concept point of view, it will even work if you're using other Mediterranean plants. So it's telling you kind of a direction, how to make it look a certain way, whether you like a native garden, a cottage garden, a desert garden. All of these things can be done with plants. So it gives you a good way to help stimulate your creative sensibilities, let's call it. Okay, now that we know what plants we think we want, and we got to take a minute to figure out how are we going to water them. Because what you choose for the plants is going to determine what is the best irrigation system. The specifics of that we'll get into later, but in broad strokes, do you want to have an area that is 100% native and it's only rained on? If you have a large property, could be elements of your landscape that you want that to be. And if you're going to use any rainwater harvesting, and how, is that going to be the passive filtration system, or is it going to be the more controlled capture and then release, if you will, of water out of your gutter systems? Because all of that will also depend on what you plant where. And do you like to hand water? Believe it or not, there are people who like to do that. And and there's a way to do that effectively. Most people don't do it effectively, but there's a way to do it effectively. And if that's what you're going to do, you need to have an idea of how you will accomplish that. This will apply predominantly if you're putting in a lot of natives into an urban lot and you want the natives to look nice all of the time and not completely go back to their dormancy like they do in the native environment. So that's another consideration. Then if you know, I don't want to be messing with water every minute and a half, you're going to either go to a drip system or an overhead spray system. And I will make this caveat just to this degree. Overhead spray can be as efficient as drip watering if it's done correctly and set the system to what the plants are. So don't think that overhead spray is necessarily evil. It isn't. It's all depending on the needs of the plant. That is the bottom line that most people also get wrong. It's not about the water system. The water system is to support the plants that meet the needs those plants need for water. People get that wrong a lot. So in other words, it's not about cutting your water down on the plants you have to save water. It's about having the right plants that don't need that much water in the first place and giving them the water that they need. I want that to sink in because that is really something people don't get right about irrigation systems. The systems are there to support the plants. There is no perfect system. It's a system that's going to work the best for you and the plant thriving. So all of these are effective ways in which to manage water on your property. So let's assume you know what you want, why you want it, what you want it to look like, kind of have an idea what the irrigation needs to be, have a plan drawn, whether it's a sketch or it's a professional landscape plan. Now you're at the point where you can actually apply for the rebate, because now you won't be in a panic about what's going to happen and you lose a lot of time trying to make those decisions. So it's pretty straightforward and pretty simple. You go to SoCalWaterWise.com, and this was what will pop up. You want to start your approval. Just follow the steps. You have everything in place and you know you have to get it done in 80 days. So now you need to secure the money. You won't be able to have the money while you're doing the project, but you want to be able to get it at the end. I will make a comment about this chat with us at the lower right. Everyone in this, from the Metropolitan Water District to your water district to Master Gardeners, we all want you to succeed. None of this is designed to kick you out. We want to help you. This chat is very good. Type in a question, they will answer it. Talk to Jeffrey or whoever is your conservation person in your water district. They will help you. They want you to succeed. If you have a question along the way, talk to us. Well, Melody and I both will talk about where you can get to us to help you. We want you to get this done. It's not confusing if you just know the general idea of what's happening, why it's happening in your timeline. Just remember, this is an aside most people also don't know, is that you get your money after you have completed it and it's been approved. And that's usually done by you submitting photographs of before and after. Sometimes they actually have a person come out and look at it. But the money you receive, just remember, some of it could be taxed. So I just don't want that to be a surprise to you. And this money is designed to assist you to make it more affordable, not to cover all of the costs. So I want you to know what the money means. So the checklist, the kind of 1, 2, 3 simplified format, I do this, then I do that, then I do that again, is in this bewaterwise.com turf replacement checklist handout. For those who like to, keep lists and make sure you're staying on track effectively, this is a good thing to have in your folder that you're keeping on your project. Okay, so now we're ready to go, as they say. Removing your grass is not as easy as it sounds. Just take that out. But I want to be sure you understand the process involved here and the timing involved for this. So make sure we have your funding, you got that secured. And now we have to think about what's the best way to get rid of my grass. And that will depend in part about how much time you have and what are your goals in order to do it. It's a change from your landscape, depending on what you have to take out and how much you have to take out. But know that even if it is a lot of work, and this, you can see this guy is sweating pretty hard because trust me, I've done it by hand. It's hard work. You're still a hero. You're helping the environment. You're helping our water supply. And we applaud you for doing that. If you happen to have the Inland Empire Landscape Guide, which I will also give you information about, it will go into great detail on these pages about the different methodologies for removing your turf grass. So let's talk about what we're going to do in regards to that. So first you have to know, what kind of grass do you have? Because there's something called cool season and warm season grasses. And they all have their pros and cons in what they give you when they're living. And they all have their pros and cons in how you get rid of them. So you have to know what your monster is that you're battling. So in broad strokes, anything that stays green beautifully in the winter and in the summer with water is probably going to be a cool season. It tends to be very fine grass, beautiful grass, unless you've allowed crabgrass, which is also green, to come into your lawn. Warm season grasses tend to have thicker and coarser blades to them. They are often dormant in winter because they like it hotter than blazes. And they tend to grow more by lateral stolons. So as you can see in this bottom, that's what that lateral stolon looks like. So they may also have seed, but they also grow by creeping further and further out. So that's a rough idea. If you do not know what kind of grass you have, take a sample and pull out like a plug if possible. and put it in a Ziploc bag, take it to any good nursery that's not a retail box store, an actual nursery where they really know their plants. How they can help identify it. Master gardeners, if you see one at a farmer's market, can probably help you identify it. So if you don't know and can't guess, get some help, just so you know. It's going to make what you do next a lot easier. So there's 4 major ways in which to remove turf. And the first one is you smother it. You don't let any light and hopefully very little moisture after it's initially there get to the plants. So it just kills them. So this is called sheet mulching or lasagna layering. It sounds luscious, actually. It is, without question, the most ecological method. It will not kill the soil. It will actually build up soil as this stuff that you're putting in the lasagna layers breaks down and enriches the soil. You can immediately plant in it because you don't necessarily have to wait for everything to die. I will caution unless it's a warm season grass. If it's cool season grass, that's true. Excuse me. And you can do this anytime you want to. And it can look very neat and tidy because what you're doing is laying cardboard or this heavy sheets of paper down and then covering it with several inches of mulch. So it will at least look neat and tidy while the process is happening. Know that it takes months for that to happen. So again, in your timeline, you may not have that much time. And it's not necessarily ideal if you're going for desert landscaping, but it still is a very good method in which to consider. Next is you bake it to death. You just make it so hot, nothing can live there. And I do mean nothing. It kills everything in the soil. And it's best done in the heat of summer. So now's not a good time to start this. It needs direct sunlight. You're using clear plastic. So now you want the radiation to work. You want the sun to come through and literally cook what's under it. This can take several months and it's still not effective on warm season grasses. So again, this is the cool season method. Then of course you can dig it out. You can do that anytime you want. It's the fastest way to get it done. It's not easy. It's very labor intensive. If you're going to do this, I would recommend you might want some mechanical help. There are sod cutters that you can rent from like Home Depot. So you can kind of shear it off because you're basically going under a very shallow root system with cool season grass and just peeling it off. Or you might hire somebody to do it because it really is hard, back-breaking work. The problem is that now you have this big pile of dirt and grass that you can't compost. It's got weeds and stuff in it too. And it's a huge volume. So could take you months if you're putting it in your trash. It's very heavy. So you're going to have to figure out how you're going to haul the stuff off. It does disturb the soil, but it doesn't kill it. And there will be some weeds and roots left behind, depending on what's in the turf that you're taking up. And then finally, our last resort is that we have to use poison. And I know there's a lot of controversy over using poisons in order to do that. But sometimes it is the way that you must go. It is a last resort way, but if you have Bermuda grass, it may be your only way. Bermuda grass can have roots down 6 feet in the soil. They spread by seed and they spread by stolons. They can take years to get out if you try to dig it out. So if you have a large area, this is probably the option you'll have to do. Now, if you go to IPM to learn about the integrated pest management, how to best use pesticides, you want to be sure that you're using all the safety precautions that you can while you're doing this. So you want to have protective equipment, meaning you have gloves, goggles, you have long pants, you have closed-toed shoes. You want to do this on a day or at the time of day that has zero or nearly, so there's not drift to plants that you don't want to kill in your yard or your neighbor's yard. You want to make sure once it's put down that you don't have pets that are going to run across it for a day or two. And it may have to take more than one application in order to actually kill it out. So no, it's effective and it works relatively quickly, but that relatively quickly might mean a month or 6 weeks to get it fully killed out. I will give a small hint if you're going to do this. It's best if you actually water the Bermuda grass you want to kill to make it nice and healthy and ready to go. So it will take up the most amount of poison that it can. Let it sort of die down, literally, and then do it all over again. Wet it, put more poison on it, let it do it. If you do that 2 or 3 times, you'll probably kill out the Bermuda grass. And that takes a few weeks to get done. Again, keeping in mind your timeline for your rebate program. I gave a lot of information. These are resources you can have that will help you be able to have it on paper or digitally. The first one is really go to the site where your water district is. They have often available free for either to go into the office to pick up these physical books, or they have the downloads available of the books, whichever way you prefer. And these 2 books are what I recommend. They really give you a lot of detail, a lot of pictures, so you can anticipate what will happen. In the SoCal Yard Transformation book and this Inland Empire Landscape Guidebook. That book is both of these are kind of going out of print. They're a little harder to find, but they are there digitally on the internet. I found the Inland Empire Landscape book through another water district to download, that IEUA.org. Western Municipal Water Districts has the book, and they also have a design book available that you can open and look at on their website. Most water districts, I've gone to a number of other water districts, they have some way of giving you concept templates or guidebooks. Look for those resources. They're terrific. They will help you really see what you have coming ahead of you if you're not used to do this kind of a plan. Then to get the definitive information on what the turf replacement program requires, you're going to go to the www.socalwatersmart.com. And that's who's actually running the overall program. Your water district is working with this group because the Metropolitan Water District offers a certain amount of money, and your specific water district offers additional monies. So they're working in conjunction with each other to make sure you can get the most money available. I will add through your water district that you are not only eligible for the turf replacement money, you may also be eligible for some irrigation replacement component rebates, and you may be eligible for some rebates on purchasing trees to put into your yard. So look at all the different pots that might apply to your project, and you might be able to start getting a pretty substantial sum of money at the end of your project to help cover that cost. So take advantage of these resources. They're going to help you become successful and help you save money at the same time. Not only do they want to help you, but we as master gardeners want to help you. And so I put up here the helpline if you happen to be in the western end of Riverside County. That's going to be the ANR Master Gardener Riverside at ucanr.edu helpline. If you're in the desert area, you want to use the other helpline, which has to do with Indio in the name there. And you can talk to us face to face at the RCRCD, where we have a monthly number of master gardeners there to help explain how to do that. Most of the farmers markets in the area have master gardeners that can help you. Please use us. We want to help. So amongst all of these different places, you will get all the information you need and the guidance that you need. And we want you to have a beautiful, thriving, water efficient landscape. And with that, I'm going to say thank you very much for listening to this presentation. I know it covered a great deal of things in a very short period of time. Just as a recap, be sure you have your funding secured, demo everything that you need out of your yard. Be sure you select permeable hardscape and build a water capture methodology. Use climate appropriate plants and group them to match the water system and the plant water needs. Apply mulch to keep water in your ground. And then the final coup de grace is make sure you're scheduling the water application correctly. And that's a bit of a science all into itself, but it is never a step once and you're done with it and walk away. And that's it. And know that when you put in a new landscaping, it takes 2 years of more consistent and more water to get it established. And then you can back off on using the water. So initially, you still are going to use water, and maybe more than you think for the plant, but not until the plant has the ability to get a good root system in place. And then you can start training it to back off on the water use. I am just going to talk briefly about this illustration over here. And this is a template that is available through another water district of what the elements look like in a beautiful yard. You'll notice that the driveway is permeable hardscape. So that's one way they added filtration to their yard. They have taken out all turf grass. There is no turf grass in here. It's hard to see, but they do have mulching. You can see it better on these stepping stones area. So they have no bare dirt anywhere in their landscape. They have chosen all climate appropriate plants here. They've added some interesting elements, you know, with a wall and different heights of plants. I will caution that this greener area between kind of by the front window and the sidewalk leading to the door can have the appearance of a grass-like plant. That's one of those gray areas. Those could be larger bunching grasses that only need the drip system in order to keep that going. So that is gray enough that might want to be approved on the rebate program before you install it. If they don't approve it, you could replace that with some other low-growing shrub-like thing. So like Myoporum, which is green and very flat and grows out to have that appearance of that, because that is an area that you would not be walking on. It's not good for walking, but it grows very low, like 3 inches or so, and spreads, and so it would make a green mat, if you will. So there's ways to get the look with and still stay within the turf replacement program guidelines. And so with that, I think I've covered everything you needed to know. Melody, have there been any questions coming through?
Yes, I have a couple. Shelley had a question about, well, she's in a desert and probably have to give her specs, but she was saying that in her backyard it's about, I guess, about 5.5 hours of sun, and she was wondering what would be this best steppable, I guess, for her to get out there.
Well, it's like everything. There's a pro and con, and the steppable is because she, you know, once a month needs to walk from one thing to another, or does she have to, you know, be out there a lot? I mean, so that will depend on the steppable. Time is a pretty good and pretty hardy once it's established as a steppable. The Diamondia is very good. Once it's established, it likes sun. So that's a possibility. I'm not an expert at the desert, so I can't tell you from personal experience what's the best steppable, but those two things are, yarrow could be very good. Yarrow is a California native, at least there's and so it likes full sun, and that can be mowed so that it looks very much like grass. But they are individual plants. So those are at least 3 ideas to explore a little bit. Ask the nurseries there, they'll tell you how well that does. And I think it will depend a lot on the soil you have, actually.
Okay.
The sun by itself isn't the problem.
I have a question from Georgia. She says, what is the best grass removal process when 20-plus-year-old trees are planted in warm season grass and roots are showing in the grass? I guess roots of the trees.
Yeah, so that's a good example of a complex issue. Your trees have been trained to take a lot of water. If you immediately switch that out to low volume water with other plantings, it could kill your trees. So from an irrigation standpoint, I'm going to go there first. You may want to keep drip irrigation toward the drip line of the trees, not at the trunk, going out about a foot from the trunk into the drip line where the end of the tree canopy ends, with dedicated drip irrigation to make sure you keep the health of those trees. Mature trees take a very long time to replace if they die, so you want to keep those. Okay, once we've got that taken care of, you may have a fight on your hand. You want to remove I would move about 3 feet, assuming there's no roots that have come back to the surface. So you want to make sure there's no roots toward the surface of the tree. I would say start as an educated start, about 3 feet circumference from the trunk of the tree. And then if you're going for, if it's a St. Augustine grass, you're pretty safe at, shearing that under the roots and digging that out, actually. And you'll have a pretty good success rate with St. Augustine. Even if St. Augustine has crept toward the trunk of the tree, it won't have as much ability to go down because of the tree roots are getting thicker and thicker as they get to the trunk. And you'll probably be able to manually dig those out and get that under control relatively soon. So if it's St. Augustine, not that hard. If it's Bermuda, you don't have any real good options. The best that you're going to be able to do is go again out about that 3 feet from the trunk and use one of the, ideally it would be the lasagna method. So you're not really killing deeper roots and the microbes and things in the soil, but you're killing the grass. That takes longer, so you may need to start that process or talk to them, because what's best for the environment, what's best for the rebate are not always clean cut, and that's kind of one of those examples. And then you're just going to have to hand dig as best you can Bermuda as close to the trunk as you can, and that could be literally years to get that. If you stay on it, you will get it, though. So I hope that helped. Did I cover what you needed to hear?
Georgia? Well, I hope she didn't leave us too quickly. But
Yeah.
Master Gardener, so she can always harass you later as well.
Sure.
That's pretty much all
Sorry, Lynn. I'm sorry. I was doing something else. Thank you. That's the answer I was thinking was there, that it's complex, complicated. And yes, I'm thinking that the rebate may not be on my way because of the length of time. And yes, I'll be talking to you more. Thank you. Thank you.
Georgia does bring up a good point. It isn't so much that you have to do the rebate program. We encourage you if it works for your yard. So here's a good example. The house that you see me pictured in front of was a new build house that I lived in Murrieta 5 years ago. And I took out all the turf grass and put in this water-wise landscape. It was very straightforward and pretty simple, but I didn't avail myself of the rebate because I wasn't willing to follow all the rules exactly. I have since moved to a house in the city of Riverside in an old neighborhood that I had to basically rebuild the house from scratch because it had been abandoned for so long. And as part of that, there were massive overgrown trees, misshapen trees, sick trees. It was bad. I literally had to scrape everything out to actually even build the house. So I don't qualify. I know what to do. I could put in I am going to put in a beautiful landscape, but my grass is dead, so I don't qualify. So I had another person who had to just adjust the square footage in order to qualify for what they could in a yard. So it's like anything. You have to do what works, or you have to adapt something to make it work the best that you can. The goal is always to be more environmentally sensitive. And whether you can do that all at once or in part or over time, with part of a rebate, with not part of a rebate, all of that is part of the equation for what works for you. Jeffrey, do you have anything to add that I might have missed about the program or talking with you?
No, actually, you know what? You covered everything so well. I did not think that you could top your last presentation, but you did. It was like, no, it was just amazing. Great information, and you really covered everything really well. You said that as the water use efficiency coordinators at everybody's water provider, we want to help you, and she's absolutely right. I hope you guys understand like how excited I get when somebody calls me and they're just ready to do their landscape transformation, and that's part of my job and being there, and I will as a concierge hold your hand to make sure that you are able to meet the requirements, understand exactly what's going on. The program SoCal WaterSmart also has a customer service line who's excellent. You can chat them, you can email them, you can call them, and they're willing to work with you. If you have, I think somebody mentioned the 250 square feet minimum. If you have less than 250 square feet, let's say you have 200 or 150 and that's all your lawn and you're willing to remove it, you are allowed to actually do that. There is an option when you go in and apply for the rebate to choose that you will be removing all of your landscape, and then you indicate how much that is. And just like everything else, they'll verify everything. But yeah, like what Lynn said, the program, your water use efficiency coordinator, your water district, and the master gardeners are all here to help you out and make sure that you're able to complete your project. And I don't think a lot of people really know like how water infrastructure in California, how important it is, how vast it is, and how far we get our water from. Not everybody understands how valuable that resource is, and our whole job is to make sure that California keeps going, make sure that we have water for everybody, and that includes having the right landscape and not just wasting water, or all of us having the most thirsty plant that there is out there, which is grass. So Lynn, you did an amazing job. Thank you so much. I was just dropping in here in the chat that part 2 of this workshop is going to be January 2025, the second Saturday in January. So remember to visit the Western Water Master Gardener work page to register. And I'm just dropping it in right here.
Well, hold on one moment, Jeffrey, because I know she has to confirm her times because she's a busy lady. So
okay.
We can put that in tentatively maybe, but don't put that into concrete as of yet, because I know I need to talk to her about her calendar. I'm surprised she's not in New Mexico someplace. Most of the time.
We'll get her on the schedule for part 2 sometime.
Yes,
but
relatively soon.
There will be a Master Gardener workshop the 2nd January of 2025. So I will still drop in that this link right here in case you missed it earlier in the workshop. There it is. Melody, did you have anything else to share?
Just a couple of things. I'll make it really quick. I did put in a link for our e-blast, or actually our newsletter. So all the people here who are not Master Gardeners, I recommend that you sign up for that. So that way you get information of what's going on in our community. Also, it shows what's going on in the desert area, Coachella, Indio, as well as out here in Riverside. So that way you can have a better idea of the different things going on. Sometimes we have workshops on citrus, we have permaculture workshops. We just have a whole lot going on. I've been a Master Gardener since 2017. I didn't even know what a Master Gardener was, and I know a lot of people don't. But we have so many events, and let me say this, the events are free. Unless it could be like a small training class, you may have to pay a small fee. But if you go to like some type of speaking event, a talking event, most of the time those are free, and you can get so much information. And I also have a tip of the day, and Lynn can slap me around on this one, but this happened to me. But I recommend everyone who's here to know where your water shutoffs are. On your house, your water shutoffs on your sprinklers, and the water shutoff inside your home, and even the water shutoff valves on the actual well, yeah, the little water shutoffs on the actual shutoff valves. That's very important. Sometimes we don't think it's important until your water valve busts and you have water going all through the whole neighborhood. So make sure that you pay attention to that, know where your shutoff valves, excuse me, your water shutoff valves are. So that was my little tip of the day. I'm gonna try to bring tips in every time so that way it looks like I'm doing something over here. Instead of just looking at the cobwebs in my house. But again, let me say this, I wanna thank everybody for coming and for supporting both sides, you know, the Western Water, used to say Western Water District, but Western Water and also the Master Gardeners of UC Riverside. And thank you again, Lynn, for such excellent presentation and hope to get you back in January and possibly February. And
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Appreciate you and have a good rest of your long weekend.
All right, take care.
Thank you, Melody.
All right.